Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a book that's often called one of the most radical, maybe one of the most influential occult texts of the 20th century. We're talking about The Book of Pleasure by the English artist and mystic Osman Spare. And just a heads up, this book does not pull its punches.
I mean, right out of the gate, Spare just throws down the gauntlet with lines like this. He wants to make one thing absolutely crystal clear. This isn't some book about finding a new and better religion. No. This is a direct assault on the very idea of belief itself.
So where does he even begin? Well, he doesn't start by building some new system. Instead, he systematically tears down the old one. He argues that the pillars of our society, things like faith, morality, even science, they aren't sources of strength. He says they're actually cages that imprison our true potential.
And just look at how radically he reframes everything we take for granted. For Spare, faith isn't some virtue. He calls it denial, or, and this is a quote, the metaphor idiocy. Morality? That's just a bunch of stagnant ideas. Religion is nothing more than projecting our own fears. And even science gets hit, becoming the accursed doubt that actually limits what's possible.
You see, for Spare, believing in a higher power isn't a strength at all. It's an admission that we're powerless. He saw it as the ultimate tool for control, which you can really feel in this quote. His goal, he claims, is to shatter this imposed belief system, because only when faith completely dies can our true sovereign self finally come out.
Okay, so if belief is the cage, then what are the bars made of, right? Well, Spare argues the mechanism that keeps us locked in is what he calls the dual principle, this endless, totally exhausting war we wage between opposites.
He starts with the big ones, the concepts we all get because they're so deeply baked into our culture. You know, ideas like heaven and hell, which are designed to control our actions through this promise of cosmic reward or punishment.
And then he shows how we use that same kind of fractured logic everywhere else, structuring our entire world around these imagined conflicts, like the one between virtue and vice, or good and evil.
But then he just flips the entire script. He asks this amazing question. Are these things really opposites, or are they just different degrees of desire? He's suggesting that heaven and hell, virtue and vice, they're all just different flavors of the very same core impulse. What he's saying is this constant back and forth, this ping-ponging between opposites, that is our normal, everyday consciousness. And he says it's an endless cycle of dissatisfaction, a fundamental illusion that stops us from ever experiencing a deeper, more whole reality.
So after he's torn down belief and this idea of duality, you gotta ask, what does he offer to replace it all? Well, his solution is this really radical philosophy of self-love, one that's designed to break us out of this prison of opposites for good.
At the very heart of this philosophy is a concept he calls Kia. Now, this isn't a god, it's not some external force. The best way to think about it is as a state of absolute pure freedom, a state that you can't really describe. You can only experience it when your mind is finally empty of all belief.
The path to getting in touch with Kia is what Spare calls self-love. But, and this is so important, we are not talking about vanity here. It's a mental state where you just embrace everything, the pleasure, the pain, the good, the bad, all of it, without any judgment. And because it just accepts all paradoxes, he argues it's the only real truth out there, because you can't logically argue against it.
I just love this quote because it perfectly captures that Spare's path isn't a passive one. This is not about quiet meditation on a cushion. No, it's an active, maybe even dangerous ride. You're literally using the raw power of your own desire to surf across that ocean of opposites.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds incredibly abstract. How do you actually do any of this? Well, this is where Spare pivots from pure philosophy to a really concrete, practical technique. His very unique and, honestly, super influential system of magic.
Yeah, Spare had, let's just say, zero patience for the complex, ritualistic magic of his time. He dismissed it all as a morass of the imagination, so he threw out all the ceremony and theatrics for a super direct, psychological method that he called the reduction of properties to simplicity. So here's how it works. It's this fascinating four-step psychological process. First, you write out your desire as a sentence. Then, you get rid of all the repeating letters and you mash what's left into a single, cool-looking symbol. Then you charge it by staring at it in a moment of mental quiet or even exhaustion until it kind of vanishes from your mind's eye. But the last step, this is the most critical. You have to completely forget about it. The idea is to sneak it past your conscious mind's skepticism and plant that desire right into your subconscious.
So what's the end game here? All this work, rejecting belief, making sigils, what is it all for? The ultimate goal of all these practices is to reach a state of radical, totally unconditional freedom. A state where yourself is the true master of its own reality.
This whole journey really culminates in some of his most, let's say, extreme practices, like something he called the death posture. The idea was that by pushing your body and mind to the absolute brink of exhaustion, you could force a state of pure mental emptiness, a moment where the self is just completely freed from the prison of its own thoughts.
And this is the mental state he was aiming for. This quiet, watchful neutrality he called the neither-neither state. It's where the mind just goes beyond all conception. In this state, things simply are. There's no need to judge them, no need to believe in them. It's the profound freedom of saying, it does not matter, it need not be.
So, what about the person who actually reaches this state? Well, according to Spare, they become truly free. I mean, they operate outside the normal rules of cause and effect. Their will becomes magical. They exist beyond simple concepts like sin, and they can experience ecstasy without having to pay that price in sorrow.
Ultimately, what Spare seems to be suggesting is that true wisdom doesn't come from piling up more knowledge or fine-tuning your beliefs. It actually comes from the complete opposite direction, from returning to a state of pure, childlike potential, totally free from the weight of everything you think you know.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. If Spare is even remotely right, and our beliefs really do shape our reality, then maybe the most powerful question we can ask isn't what we choose to believe, but what we might just dare to unbelieve.